So for the past while, the speakers that have come before me have been very inspirational. So are you guys ready to actually get your hands dirty and code? I guess yun yung question, no? Okay. I'm gonna help you out a bit there. Most of us, siguro, particularly the ones who are fresh from college, our experience is basically around Java, maybe a few JavaScript, HTML, mga ganon. But of course, the trend right now is making apps. iOS, Android, and all that stuff. But how do we start building that, something like that? How do we move along? I'll give you an idea. I'll give you a basic overview, okay? So, reminder lang, I'm going to be using a lot of copyrighted material on this. So, okay? You have been warned. All right, game. So, my name is Darth, and to introduce myself, recently, I guess my favorite anime for this year is probably Kill la Kill. You can watch it live on, you can watch it for free legally on daisuki.net. And I have been fortunate enough to get into the alpha program of Blizzard for the Heroes of the Storm. My favorite unit is basically the Siege Tank. I love that game very much. Pretty much all of my free time is spent there. But when I'm not watching anime or I'm not playing games, I'm actually the mobile client development manager for Voyager Innovations Inc. So that's, Voyager is the fully owned subsidiary of Smart, and we do a bunch of stuff. One of the things that we've done is NLEX Assist. Sa mga pumupunta dyan sa NLEX, maybe you've seen the TARP. So you can use this to get traffic updates and all that. Another thing that we made is raincheck.ph. It was actually featured in Yahoo as one of the 8 must-have apps for the rainy season. You can use this. It's integrated with Project NOAA of the government. So it has very accurate rain data. Alam mo kung uulan mamaya, you'll get a notification saying na 63% chance of rain later. Bumili ka ng payong. Actual quote. Okay? Also, nanonood ng PBA, nanonood kayo ng mga games ng Philippines. We actually were the ones who made Pinoy Hoops. And I actually coded maybe 40% of the original backend when it first came out in 2012. And we won 2 Anvil Awards. Aha, thank you. So one of the things we also made is this, and I'm going to be focusing a bit more on this. Okay, so that's the Babel chat application. We'll go through that in a bit. So, what am I here to talk about? Basically, basic app tech stack. You guys want to make apps. Probably almost all of you do. What kind of technology stack will you be needing in order to make the next generation apps, in order to make award-winning apps like the ones I showed before, in order to put yourselves on the App Store or on the Google Play Store? First, a story. In 2012, we were approached by management saying na parang, there's Line, there's WhatsApp, and there's all these other chat applications. These are all made by outside the Philippines, obviously. So why doesn't the Philippines, which is the SMS capital of the world, doesn't have their own chat application? Or at least none that's popular enough that's being used by the masses. So we sat down and thought about that and said, maybe we should. Maybe we should build something. So we used the following principles that I'm going to show you in order to make an app like this. By the way, doon sa nagtatanong kung bakit yan yung image ko, that's because this is Chunibyo. It came out in 2012. That was what I was watching when we first started building this. Okay? So when you're making an app, you have 4 core considerations in terms of the technology. Number 1 is the mobile platform. Number 2, the back-end tech stack. Number 3, the API or protocol for integration. And number 4, what infrastructure you're going to use. So let's start with the mobile platform. Right now, there's probably the most popular ones: Android, Windows, Mac, and BlackBerry. But honestly, there are really just 2 things on your mind right now. It's either Android or iOS. Those are the only 2 things that you're fighting with. Some of the things that you have to consider when you're going to develop for one of these platforms are the following. When you want to develop for Android, you can use Linux, Mac, or Windows. You can use Eclipse, or you can use Android Studio. And basically, there's just a one-time fee so that you can register yourself an account in Google Play of $25. Siguro $25, 1,000, mga ganon. For iOS, definitely you need a Mac in order to build anything on top of that. You need to use Xcode, which is free if you have a Mac, but you have to pay $99 a year. This is a yearly license that you have to renew with Apple. Some of the other things that you have to consider is, for Android, there are more units out there. In terms of number of users and number of units, Android is probably has a greater share of the pie. It has more access to the units features. Actually, if you try to get your phone number through code on Android, kaya yon. If you want to send an SMS through code sa Android, kaya yon. But in iOS, you can't do that. It's a security thing. The problem with Android is, sobrang daming na models doon, sobrang daming units. It's pretty hard to make an app that you can ensure will work on everything. There's so many things to consider, so many sizes, resolutions. Yung iba may mga nagfi-flip pa. So many things to think about. In iOS, yun yung madali. You have very few units. Apple has just their phone, their pad, and their mini. And I think mag-a-announce sila soon ng isa pang bagong unit for iOS 6. But the security features of Apple actually makes it safer for the user, but makes it very, very difficult to use as a developer. If I want to get the phone number of that unit, I can't do that sa Apple because it's restricted. If I want to try to toggle on and off yung Wi-Fi using code, using your app, you can't do that. The user has to do that himself. This is part to prevent malicious application developers from abusing the powers of their code. Sa madaling salita, ito lang naman yung kailangan nyo maalala talaga. The real deal is, people buy Android because of UI customizability, because it's cheap, it has free apps, and may mga pirated apps. Mas madali. People buy iPhones because it's cool. Ganun lang kasimple yun. So sometimes, the thing you have to consider is, do you want to develop using cross-platform tools? Do you want, instead of worrying about Java and Android, and about C, Objective-C, and iOS, do you want to just use a tool that can handle both, using one single language? Para bang hinintay mo na lang yung Pokemon Yellow, imbis na bumili ka ng red at saka blue ng magkahiwalay. There are things to also consider with that. Native is considered as harder to code. You have to learn the intricacies of Java, you have to learn the intricacies of Objective-C. So sometimes you have to get into the nitty-gritty detail. But the advantage of that is, you have access to all of the device's capabilities. Walang ina-abstract sa'yo. Lahat ng bagay na pwede mong kalikutin at inaalaw ng operating system, pwede mong galawin. Also, since you're working natively with the native binaries of the app, the code works faster. Ngayon, cross-platform tools typically say they're easier to code. May caveat yun ng konti. Most of the time, for common uses, yes, that's true. It's easier to code. You will have some problems if you're going to try and access things that are very intrinsic to the device or things that you have to import from outside, because you have to be sure that whatever other third-party things or libraries that you're using will work with this new third-party cross-platform language. Also, there's questionable access to device capabilities. Kasi third-party siya, it tries to address the least common denominator of all devices. Pero pagka ganun, hindi niya mahugot talaga yung mga kailangan mong mga features ng isang device. Generally speaking, it's lower, but depending on the tool, maybe that's not a problem. But it's something you have to consider depending on the tool. Actually, if you ask me, if you want to build something that's cross-platform, perhaps the better choice is just to go mobile web. Make sure you have a website. It's mobile responsive. It works well with small screens, tablet screens, and desktop screens. And it can work across anybody. You won't even have to worry about Windows or BlackBerry as long as you're HTML5 compliant. Right? Next, the back-end stack. This is normally the heart of the application because if you don't have a back-end, anong klaseng apps lang magagawa mo? More or less two things. Games, which is cool, or mga to-do list na isa-store mo lang doon sa app mo. For most services that you will need, you will have to implement a back-end na tatamaan ng application mo. And here are some things you have to consider when making back-ends. Very important is what technology you will use. The speaker before me I was asking him a while ago, how did you guys implement your backend? And it's basically based on Java and Apache. So this is something common, something commonly taught in schools na parang Java, Apache, Tomcat combination ka, minsan may Spring Framework. In Voyager, we need to work a bit faster than that, and we have to maximize the ability to use a language na medyo kilala na. So what we thought, we'll capitalize on JavaScript. Since a lot of graduates know how to use JavaScript because they're doing it when they're coding their websites, what if JavaScript was also used to code in the back end? Fortunately, may ganon. There's no JS. So we're one of the people here who's actively incorporating Node.js in our backend for production use. And the great thing about this is it's JavaScript. So you can code in JavaScript for your websites. You can code in JavaScript for your AJAX calls. And you can also use JavaScript for your backend call. It's already a web server. You don't need to put Apache there. When you're running something in Node.js, it's already serving web pages. And it's single-threaded. Medyo may pros and cons yan, but sometimes it makes it easier because you do not have to worry about multi-threading too much. Merong caveats yan, pero generally speaking, you know that when your line of code goes to this point, or umabot ka sa ganitong breakpoint, alam mo wala siyang kasabay. Some other things na kailangan ma-consider is database. What type of databases will you use? Generally speaking, there are two things na pinag-iisipan mo, relational or non-relational databases. Now, the typical relational databases are MySQL, PostgreSQL, or if you're an enterprise, yung Oracle yan. Diyan na yung nagtatalo dyan. For non-relational databases, the popular choices are Mongo, Redis, and DynamoDB. The main difference is relational databases are very good for stable data. Yung data mo, yung tables mo, yung fields mo, hindi masyadong magbabago, okay yan. If you need to do summaries and computations across various rows and columns, that's pretty good. Pero kung gumagawa ka ng isang app na medyo hindi mo pa alam kung gaano kadalas mo babaguhin at kung mag-i-insert or remove ka ng fields maya't maya, basically dictionary type of of storage siya. Pupul ka lang na record, mag-i-insert ka ng record, pupul ka ng record. I would actually recommend that you try something that's non-relational. So, you have a database, you have a backend, and you have your app. How do you make them talk together? You have to decide on a protocol. And that's normally what they call the APIs. Actually, at this point in time, isa lang klaseng API protocol ang marirecommend ko for general use. And that's REST. Please lang, wag na kayong mag-soap. REST na lang tayo. There are a lot of advantages to this. Ang problem kasi sa SOAP, although it fosters a lot of standards, maraming dinadagdag na metadata sa SOAP. Instead of just sending the data you want to the backend, so the backend can do its stuff, you have to wrap the data in all sorts of this standard protocol things. So please lang, unless meron kayong very specific technical need na hindi nyo pwede anuhin, please use REST. Okay? Now, where will you put all of that? You have your database, you have your backend, you have to serve it from somewhere. Actually, these days, kung meron kang sarili mong data center or marami kang server sa bahay mo, tapos pwede kang magkabit ng magandang internet access doon, fine, gano'n na lang. Pero, most of the time, hindi. But with a credit card, you can just use the cloud. Use something that's available in the cloud and set up something you don't virtual. If you're done, you're tired, or your project didn't work out, shut it off. Wala kang problema sa kuryente, wala kang problema sa internet access, and you only pay for what you use. Normally, what they use here is Amazon Web Services. This is probably the most mature and most popular choice. And the most popular choices, kasi ang daming binibigay na Amazon services on the cloud, is EC2, which means you can have your own virtual server, and S3, which means you have a bucket where you can dump pictures, video files, etc. para i-reference mo na lang URL. And you don't have to worry about serving those files on your own. And all of this is done with redundancy already. So, if we decide to put this all together, what do we have? Basically, you pick a mobile platform, you settle with REST as your protocol, and then you have machines running on EC2 and your files on S3, and then you use Node.js with a combination of MongoDB to serve your websites and have your database. Okay na yun. May app ka na. Ganun lang kadali. As long as alam mo kung paano gamitin yan. Pero those are the tech that you can use within your means. Ang maganda kasi dito, aside from yung developer licenses, pretty much everything is free. Yung EC2 and yung S3, you may need a credit card to use these. Pero yung first year of using it is free. Ang maganda dyan is may smart money naman eh. Ako, I actually pay for them using my smart money. I have my own private account and I just don't use the corporate account. Okay, so going back to Babel, how did we use these principles when we built this app? So I already showed you some of the key technical stacks that we use by default in order to decide on how to build something. But in this case, we needed to make a messaging service. A messaging service that could handle millions of transactions. Actually, up to date, siguro we have had 40 million transactions already. So, the key thing to remember, so I gave you the basics, but the key thing to remember is you have to make sure that you use the right tool for the job. Hindi porke yun yung default na technical stack ang gagamitin mo, yun na lang magsasettle ka na doon, tapos ipipilit mo yung gusto mo doon sa stack na yun. No, you don't do that. You select the technology to fit the problem that you need to solve. Hindi ka gagamit ng Magic Carp para talunin yung kalaban mo. Hindi mo gagamitin si Magic Carp at all. Ang gagawin mo, ilalagay mo siya sa harap, pagka dumating na yung kalaban, isa-swap back mo siya, tapos pagka nag-earn na siya ng XP at naging Gyarados na siya, doon ka lalaban. You pick your battles, and you choose the right tools. Okay? So, the problem that was facing us was, ito kalaban namin. When it comes to chat, the most popular thing was Facebook, basically. Kahit sabihin mo may line, kahit sabihin mo may ano, the thing is, everybody chats with Facebook. They have solved the problem. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. So what we said was, instead of coding the chat backend from scratch, why don't we learn from what Facebook learned? And what did Facebook use? They used Erlang. This is a different language. Erlang is actually a language that's very good for clustering and very good for parallel processing. And it was used as a means to create eJabberD, which is yun yung basic tsaka first source code ng Facebook. Right now, I think Facebook has coded their own Erlang version of chat. But when they started Facebook chat, they basically used eJabberD, which is running on Erlang. So we took a cue from that. The next is, meron kang database. Gusto namin, non-relational database para madaling magalaw-galaw ng konti. But how do you scale that? It's still a difficult problem. So we looked for a solution and we found that Amazon, yung DynamoDB na Amazon, actually solves the scaling problem for us, at least for the next few years. So we decided to tackle this. The other thing is, with all those millions of messages that are coming up, kailangan may caching solution ka eh. Something na pagka namatay yung machine, okay lang. Pagka kasi yung database namatay, mawawala yung data, that's actually, that's a big no-no. Kailangan, meron kang something in between your main database and your application that will help feed the data. Pero kung namatay yun, okay lang. But it's fast. So we were looking for a solution and we found a good caching solution with Redis. The reason why we chose this is because Redis is not only a non-relational database, which means we can feed it pretty much any form of data that we want, but also it's because this is a memory running database. This does not run on a disk. So yung speed niya kasing bilis ng RAM kung saan siya nakakabit na machine. Finally, we had to store yung account details, passwords, usernames, etc. These things do not change. These things, they remain stable and it will pretty much stay the same. Hindi kami magdadagdag ng bagong columns dun. So since very stable naman siya and it won't change, then sure, let's use a relational database. Let's use MySQL, why not? So if we put all of that together, nag-iba lang kami ng konti, pero we're still using the same principles eh. We're still using EC2, S3, we have REST, we have the ano, but we changed some of the things to make it fit the problem that we were trying to solve. And actually, that kind of worked. That's why right now Babel is a pretty good chat app that supports groups, public chat rooms, secret messages, messages that disappear, and it serves around 40 million messages per day already. So here are some things you have to remember when you build your own app. One, tech will change. Please just accept that fact. Right now, baka marunong ka mag-Java. Ako, right now, marunong ako mag-JavaScript. We know Node.js, we know Redis. But 5 years from now, maybe those are not the right solutions anymore. Sa iOS pa lang, narinig nyo na eh. They were introduced the Swift programming language. Right now, actually, Swift has existed for a while, but right now, Apple is pushing to adopt it as their main programming language. So paano na lahat ng mga experts sa Objective-C? You have to turn around. Hindi pa ngayon okay pa, nagpa-parallel pa sila, but I'm pretty sure in mga 2 to 3 years time, they will push that Swift will be the main programming language. Sa Android, for the past while, we have been comfortable in using Eclipse and probably Maven to build your APKs, yung mga files ninyo. But right now, Google has introduced yung Android Studio. And they're actually pushing to use Gradle. So lahat na natutunan mo sa pag-build sa Maven, sa Ant, kailangan mo itabi ng konti kasi after a few years, Gradle na yung standard yan. And then what happens after that? Mga 2 to 3 years after that, 5 years after that, baka may bago na naman. The tech will always change. Every so often, the tech will always change. Accept that fact. The key thing is, you carry the fundamentals with you. The programming concepts, the experience, you carry that with you. Yung mga tinuturo sa'yo sa school, you carry that with you. Kasi kahit anong language yan, basta object-oriented language yan, may classes ka, may inheritance ka. Those concepts will stay the same, and you can apply the same architecture and the same solution to any language that supports OOP. By the way, please lang, pagka sinabing OOP, hindi ito dinadrag-drop yung buttons sa screen na. Please lang, hindi ganun yun. That's a totally different thing. Okay? Number 2, as I said earlier, pick the right tool for the job. You do not force fit a technology just because it's what you know. You pick the right solution that will fit the problem at hand. Number 3, whatever you build, finish it. Get it done and ship it out. This will be very useful, not just so that you will learn how to finish things and to complete things and you will go through the end-to-end process. But if you want to apply to companies like Voyager, Smart, SMI, sa amin mas valuable yung may demo ka eh. You can talk about OOP, you can talk about multi-threading, you can talk all you want. But if you have a working app and you can answer our questions when we ask you, bakit ka gumawa ng list view dito? Bakit ka gumawa ng ano? Bakit ka naggumawa ng inheritance dito? Bakit gumawa ka ng ganun? Ba't mo kinostomize yung cells na to? If you can answer that because you built the app and you can show us that app working, That's a lot more valuable than any piece of paper listing down your achievements in school. Maximize the available tools out there. Ba't ka pa bibili ng server kung pwede ka naman mag-cloud tapos babayaran mo na lang ng $5 a month? Bibili ka ba ng 20,000 peso na machine tapos kakabitan mo siya ng internet tapos hindi mo pa alam kung ano pupuntahan mo? Bakit kapag gagawa ng bagong library na nagpa-parse ng isang string para i-extract yung integer or yung real number sa gitna, kung meron ng existing library na ganun? Maximize what's out there. And the most important thing is you have to make sure that whatever app you're making is cool. Because cool sells. Bakit bumebenta yung Apple? Hindi naman dahil nauna sila dun eh. We have had phones before. We have had Walkmans. Ewan ko sa naabutan niyo yung Walkman. Naabutan ko pa yung Walkman. We have had music players before. Pinagsama lang nila sa isang iPhone. But it looks cool. And the cool kids are using it. And that's why it's selling. Your app, bakit ka pa mag-i-Instagram? Kaya naman kumuha ng pictures using ano mo eh. Because pagka nag-Instagram ka, may mga cool filters na kinakabit. Cool works and cool sells. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Thank you very much.